Welcome to our live listening session for How Not to Travel the podcast. It is a podcast that hit number one in 12 or 13 different countries, I believe. We were up there with Oprah for a little bit. And now we are releasing our season 3 episode, and it is about food and travel. And this season, I have a co-host, Luis Lopez.
Hey everyone, it's great to be a part of How Not to Travel. I remember actually that my very first podcast that I worked on for Studio Cinta was How Not to Travel. I worked on editing the second season, which I really enjoyed, and then I like that we're kind of coming full circle from that because now I get to be a part of it as well, and of course. Talking to you, Kiona, and preparing all of the episodes that we have for this season, which we have 8 episodes for this third season. And the first one we're going to be listening to today. This season is all about food and how food has traveled. We're going to talk about 8 pretty interesting stories about the journeys that food has done. We're going to talk about, for example, bananas and what a unique sort of migration they've done throughout the world. We're going to talk about Tabasco sauce, which is in a couple of weeks from now. We're going to talk about what else? Croissants, vanilla ice cream, so many more. Please, I invite you to follow us on social media and just read more about the show because it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'd also like to say that we encourage everyone to participate, to let us know what they think about the episode that we're about to listen to. You're welcome to just write any comments you have, any reactions in the chat, and then after that, once we finish listening to it, we're going to just start a conversation, and everyone's questions or comments are welcome. So yeah, without further ado, we'll listen to the episode. But before that, we have to, of course, introduce our very special guest for today's episode.
Yes, I'm so excited to present my special guest, Elijah, who is in his car. He's about to have like taxi cab confessionals up in here. He is Native Hawaiian, and I'll let him present himself because he has a whole presentation, I'm sure, of himself. But he is a Native Hawaiian culture practitioner. He has a massive TikTok, a massive Instagram. Y'all follow him, Son of Oahu. And I am privileged to invite him today because how can we talk about Hawaiian pizza without a Hawaiian person up in here telling us if we did good, if we did bad? I chose Elijah because he's going to tell me, sis, you did all right, but so he's not going to just drag me. But he's also super knowledgeable. He knows a lot of things. And so I'm also invite you to ask him questions directly as like I'm not Hawaiian and neither is Luis Lopez, born and raised, but not of the blood. And so I wanted to invite Elijah to take part in this and for you also to meet him. And we are launching our Hawaii trip. And I wanted you all to meet Elijah because he's going to be your 24/7 guide. So, so that's a exciting thing. So it launches on Patreon first. So without further ado, Elijah, if you could introduce yourself.
Mm. I'm going to unify everybody in breath, a quick one. So when you hear Hanu, you can take a deep breath. And when you hear Ha, you can exhale. Let's unify together as one family. Because although we come from different places around the world, the one thing that always brings us together at the foundation of all of us is our spirit, is our breath, and is all the universal consciousness that lives within all of us. So let's breathe together. Hanu. Ah. Hanu. Ah. Hanu. Ah. O nauna i tahala me ka lehu e halele ua no i ana ka nui. O ka ono ia i anu i li ane ho i o kai i me. A hike mai no o koe i ki pume ke aluha. Aluhai, aluhai, aluhai. Ano ay Miki Aloha, peace and love with all of you guys around the world. Well, Elijah Kalam Shane. I come from the beautiful lands of Oahu Kakuhihewa, Oahu Alua, which, if you are unfamiliar with Hawaii, is what is considered to be our main island. And Honolulu, which is considered to be the capital of the quote-unquote state of Hawaii, but is the capital of the Hawaiian Kingdom, is Honolulu, Hawaii. I've been here all of my life, and I'm a cultural practitioner, and what I would consider to be a spiritualist. And so we actually do a lot of our healing arts work, and actually through being a kahu and an educator in our organization called Awakened Aloha, we really specialize in the healing arts and helping people to reconnect to who they come from, through actually spirit, through culture, and through consciousness. And so we help people from all around the world on how to reconnect to their ancestral principles through a connection to the spirit of Hawaii and the universal principles that are of our ancestors, especially the universal principle of aloha. And so as she said earlier, speaking of Kiona, as she explained earlier, we actually do a lot of the experiential work and immersive experiences in culture here in Hawaii, and we help to uplift and awaken humanity through their immersion into the culture of Hawaiian people. So it's good to be with you guys. It's good to be on the panel. It's good to talk about some pizza today. Yeah, you.
Okay, so let's go ahead and play the podcast, and we can live commentary. I'll be in the chat. Elijah, if you want to be in the chat, Luis will be in the chat.
Yes.
Type in as we go along, and that way we can go back to our chat comments, and then after the season is over, episode is over, we can go back and see what we want to discuss. So I haven't listened to it. It's my first time. It'll be Elijah's first time. Luis obviously edited it, so he's listened to it many times.
All right. So we're ready then. Okay, I'm going to start playing the episode.
You eat pineapple, it's actually eating you back. Hi, this is Kiona.
And this is Luis.
And we're your hosts of How Not to Travel Podcast Season 3.
Fasten your seatbelts and take your seat at the table.
In this season, we're traveling around the world from our dinner tables to see how cultural exchange contributed to some of the world's most famous foods.
This week, Hawaiian pizza.
Okay, Luis, this episode is about murder, colonization, and allergies.
That sounds dramatic.
We are going to be discussing, is Hawaiian pizza really Hawaiian? And the equally important question, does pineapple belong on pizza? But we'll get into that later.
Oh, wow. So we're starting straight with the controversial question, right?
Yes. Okay, so I hate pineapples on pizza. I don't know why anyone would put sweet citrus juice on already citrus tomato. I don't understand it.
Okay, so before we continue, if you like pineapple on pizza, please continue to listen. don't tune out. So yes, please let me know why it's not Hawaiian. I could kind of imagine it. It sounded a little bit too like someone just thought putting a pineapple on something automatically makes it Hawaiian.
Yeah.
But I didn't know for sure. So I'd love to know more about that story.
Okay, well, this takes us all the way back in time to when someone brought pineapples to Hawaii.
Someone brought pineapples to Hawaii, so they're not native to Hawaii.
Exactly. Pineapples are not indigenous to the island.
Huh. Okay, so where did it come from?
It's actually not even part of the indigenous diet. The majority of my native Hawaiian friends are allergic to pineapple, and that is why they say Hawaiian pizza is not actually Hawaiian.
So many questions. Wow, how did this all happen then? I mean, I'm intrigued.
So pineapples are actually endemic to South America. Probably Brazil is the first place, as a scientific word for pineapple is ananas, which is a Tupi word, and the Tupi are an indigenous tribe of Brazil.
That makes sense because like a lot of languages have the word or a form of the word ananas as pineapple, right?
And in fact, there's a Hawaiian word for pineapple, which is halakahiki. Hala is another fruit, and kahiki is foreign. So it means a foreign fruit that resembles hala.
Oh, do you know what hala is?
It's actually a plant that is not edible, but it just looks like a pineapple. So literally all Hawaiians know, just based off language, that this fruit is not from here.
So then the word for pineapple just means this fruit that looks like this other fruit.
Yep.
And it's kind of ironic because in Spanish, of course, we have piña. And if I'm not mistaken, it's because it looks like pine cones.
Yes, exactly.
Did I steal a fact from you?
No,
Okay.
I actually was not even going to cover that, but that is exactly why it's called a piña.
Yeah, so I love that like Hawaiian word for pineapple comes from it looking like something else, but then Spanish word for pineapple also comes from it looking like something else.
Yes, exactly. And actually, it's the Spanish who travels with the pineapple from Brazil to Europe.
And I'm sure it was like exotic to them.
Yes, Europeans go crazy over it. Royals are gifting each other pineapples and growing their own pineapple, I guess, greenhouses. And they even have rivalries over them.
This was like the original royal hipster trend of like, you haven't been into pineapples yet?
Yeah, like, are you not growing a pineapple in your greenhouse? Like, who are you, you peasant?
Okay. So I imagine that they weren't like easily accessible to many people.
Exactly. So it takes almost 3 or 4 years to completely grow one pineapple from planting to harvest.
3 to 4 years?
Yes.
One single pineapple?
Yes.
Wow.
So these things were mad expensive, costing around $8,000 in today's dollars.
$8,000?
For one pineapple.
A single pineapple?
People weren't even eating them.
Oh, they didn't even want them for that?
No, they were displaying them like as decoration.
So they were just like very fancy natural artwork or sculptures or furniture or something.
And people made whole sculptures. They created architecture around the shape of the pineapple. Like, it was a huge craze.
This is so intriguing. Like, why would people do that and then not even eat it? Although I guess if you eat it, then that's the end of it, right? So maybe they held on to it a little longer, but it still goes bad, right? So,
right.
So the European aristocracy wasn't even bothering to eat them. Like, they didn't even know they could be eaten. They just sort of like
displayed
them and, showed them off. Wait a minute. Were pineapples the first NFTs?
Maybe. Yeah, like you don't really consume them. You just
own them and brag to everyone else that you own them?
Yeah, exactly. It was actually ship captains who discovered that the pineapple was packed with nutrients and prevented scurvy, so they became highly in demand at ports. So actually, did you know that pineapple is the only source in nature of the enzyme bromelain? And bromelain actually digests proteins. So when you eat pineapple, it's actually eating you back.
Yes, Kiona's right. Did you know that annoying feeling on your tongue after eating pineapple happens because the pineapple is trying to eat you? So pineapples have bromelain, a chemical that breaks down proteins. And when you eat pineapple, that's exactly what it starts doing to your tongue. It doesn't actually harm you, but it often leaves you with this stinging sensation that we know all too well. The best and arguably most delicious way to counter this is to pair the pineapple with a creamy dairy product, such as yogurt or ice cream. That way, you balance the pH and you give the pineapple another protein to nibble on first.
Having it in high demand in ports was actually how it makes its way to Hawaii.
It was the sailors who originally said, wait, we can actually eat this and this is healthy.
Yes, and remember, piña is Spanish, and it was the Spanish sailors in the 1500s who later became friends with King Kamehameha the Great, who brought it to Hawaii.
Oh, okay. So it was by way of the Spanish that it eventually arrived in Hawaii?
Yes. But here is where our story takes an ugly turn. So Europeans start arriving to the Hawaiian Islands, bringing with them disease, and ends up wiping out 80% of the native population. Sound familiar?
Of course, yeah. Unfortunately, that's also what happened in a lot of Mexico and throughout Latin America, if I'm not mistaken, with indigenous populations.
Yep. And then Hawaii starts land reforms, allowing foreigners to buy large plots of land for agriculture production because the population declined and they had to make money somehow.
Right.
Then from there, they started importing Asian and Puerto Rican and Portuguese servants and used indigenous labor to toil the grounds. But it actually wasn't pineapple. It was sugar that took over the land. And then Hawaii started actually depending on sugar production.
Right, like as an economy, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
So Hawaii's economy fully turned into a market economy, globalization before it was fully sustaining itself, but now it became a global powerhouse.
Okay.
And the economy completely depended on sugar production, which gave foreign landowners a lot of power. Well, these landforms brought the devil, Dole, James Dole. So James Dole acquires 64 acres of land and starts planting pineapple.
That's why the name Dole is so associated with pineapple.
Yes,
right?
I was just about to ask you that. So have you seen Dole in the grocery store?
Of course, yeah. And like canned pineapples and I don't know, they probably sell other fruits, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Well, you will never see Dole the same again after this story.
Uh-oh.
So
what's going to happen?
Yeah, Dole ups the pineapple game, replaces manual labor with machine labor.
Okay.
So peeling and cutting pineapple with machinery. Then he turns to marketing and starts creating and marketing recipes using pineapples and places them in women's ads and cookbooks.
So a sort of like pineapple craze going on, making people buy pineapple and try them and add them to everything.
Exactly. So the demand for pineapple rose. So then the Dole family purchased an entire island in Hawaii. It's called Lanai. And it was just for the exclusive rights to grow pineapple there.
The whole island is specifically dedicated to growing pineapples.
Yes. And all of this led to the illegal takeover of Hawaii and pointing a gun to the Queen of Hawaii's palace, demanding she get the hell out of her own kingdom.
Whoa. Okay. So things escalated suddenly. I was not ready for that. I had heard, but I didn't know it actually was related to the pineapple industry or had to do with that.
Yeah, so it's a really common phrase back home where they say, Dole stole Hawaii. The Dole family grew so large in power and money that they got into politics. And well, in 1893, a group of 13 white businessmen staged a coup.
Okay.
A U.S. warship without the U.S. president's approval arrived in Honolulu Harbor and disposed of the Queen and instituted a new government.
So this wasn't even with presidential approval. They just decided to do it.
They made some back-end deal with some military guys and had them send a warship and pointed at the Queen's palace, and the Queen did not want her people to die, nor did she want to die. And so she retired to her home, and these men took over.
So these guys didn't only stage a coup and, of course, took over Hawaii, but they also, I guess, betrayed the U.S. armed forces.
Yes. President Cleveland, who was the president of the U.S. at the time, criticized this abuse of power and the involvement of American troops. But at the same time, he didn't really do anything about it. Congress didn't move to stop it.
Slapped them on the wrist, basically?
Yeah, he was like, this is wrong, and then did nothing. And guess who was the president of this new government?
Who was?
Stanford Dole. Yeah, so that's why they say Dole stole.
Wow.
So, yeah, the pineapple family established themselves as leaders. Annexing Hawaii would mean they would eliminate the foreign import tax on pineapples, and that would cause them to make even more money. And on top of that, this new government prevented most Hawaiians and all Asians from voting. And that's why they say it was completely illegal to annex Hawaii to the United States. The original people of the lands weren't even allowed to vote for this.
This is terrible.
Wow. It is. Hawaiians still to this day acknowledge their own sovereignty and do not claim to be part of the United States, but rather their own country with their own culture, language, religion, lifeways, histories, all of the above.
Of course. But wait a minute. So this is all about the pineapple, right? But what about pineapple on pizza then?
Yeah, so it actually gets quite random.
Okay.
Hawaiian pizza was created in 1962 by a Greek immigrant in Canada.
Did you know that the inventor of Hawaiian pizza remained largely uncredited for most of his life? Mr. Sotirios Panopoulos, who was better known as Sam, immigrated to Canada from Greece in 1954 at the age of 20. He and his brother opened a restaurant in Chatham, Ontario, and in 1962, he created the now world-famous dish, which his customers apparently didn't like at first, but slowly grew to love the sweet and sour combination. However, he hadn't really been properly credited for the invention until someone attributed it to him on his Wikipedia page in 2009. When Mr. Panopoulos died in 2017 at the age of 82, Pizza Hut locations in the UK decided to honor his legacy by handing out free Hawaiian pizzas to celebrate the man they had dubbed Lord of the Pineapples.
This was a direct result of the Hawaiian Islands illegally becoming a state in 1959, and everyone was in love with Hawaiian culture, just thought it was so exotic. So 3 years later, by the time it gets to this Greek immigrant, the brand of the canned pineapples that were imported were called Hawaiian, hence Hawaiian pizza.
Okay, so the pineapples were labeled as Hawaiian,
Yes.
I guess because they were grown there and
Yes.
sent everywhere around the world, and that's why he made this association.
So Hawaiian pizza is in fact not Hawaiian, nor pineapple for that matter. But if it wasn't for the Italians and their pizza, a Greek man living in Canada, the Spanish who brought the pineapple to Hawaii, and the American and English people taking over the island, and the indigenous people being robbed of their land, we would not have Hawaiian pizza.
One thing that I still want to maybe know a little bit more about is how come the Hawaiian pizza that this Greek guy made in Canada becomes so popular? I wonder if it has to do with what you were saying about pineapple being seen as this very exotic fruit, and since it was made in the 60s, I wonder if it sort of was made at the right time for it to be such a sensation worldwide.
Yeah, so during the 60s, Hawaii had just been added as a state. And so it allowed Americans to travel there without a visa or anything. Like you didn't need a passport to go. So people were going crazy going to Hawaii. I mean, that's when you see the rise of surf culture. You see the rise of surf rock and roll, skate culture. The 70s come up, the hippies. So Hawaii had a moment. It was like a global trend, and that is where the globalization of Hawaiian pizza came from.
To be honest, Hawaiian pizza has never really been my favorite flavor, but I've always been the type that if that's what there is at a party, I'll have it. I guess it's okay. But, now I think I'm less of a fan.
Yeah, I mean, you know how I feel about it. I already don't think it tastes good.
Did you know that there's a place in Hawaii where you can actually get, quote, real Hawaiian pizza? So by now we're all aware that the Hawaiian pizza we know isn't actually from Hawaii. But a few pizzerias in the islands have reclaimed the recipe by making it with local ingredients. For example, Flatbread Company on Maui Island makes their take on this classic by switching the ham for kalua pork, a popular dish that's traditionally slow cooked and gives the meat a super soft texture and smoky flavor. Another pizzeria, Longboard Legends on Hawaii Island, makes their dough with taro flour, a native ingredient. And both versions include Hawaiian-grown pineapples. So we're about to have our favorite food of the season.
All right, let's dig in. I'm putting chili peppers on it to mask the taste.
Yeah.
I just took a big piece in my mouth. Okay, so I'm just going to go on a limb and say maybe this food just shouldn't have been created. Like, I'm not really sure it was worth it.
It's okay at best, I guess.
Yeah, and like the way all the cultures mixed, it just wasn't a vibe.
So you are most definitely not a fan of Hawaiian pizza, but do you like pineapple on anything in particular?
Yes, I love pineapple on tacos al pastor.
Oh yeah, that can be very good.
Which I'm sure has its own story completely. Maybe for season 2.
Yeah, I'd love to explore that.
And that's it for this episode.
If you're still hungry for more, stick around and listen to our other episodes this season. How Not to Travel is produced by Studio 80 and hosted by Dr. Kiona and me, Luis Lopez. Our executive producer is Lori Martinez. Production and sound design by me and Chiara Sandella. Our production coordinator is Catalina H. Vélez. and our social media manager is Sofia Rodriguez. You can follow us on Instagram at How Not to Travel Pod and at Ochenta Podcasts. You can also find us on Twitter at Ochenta Podcasts and on TikTok at Studio Ochenta. Read more about the show and about our other productions on our website, ochentastudio.com. Thanks for listening y buen provecho.
Is that the end?
Yes.
Oh my God. I totally forgot. We recorded this like a year ago, so I don't even know what was said. But all the little crunch sounds were so cute. You did so well, like sound wise, Luis. By the way, if anybody needs a sound man, Luis is the man. You gotta hire Ochenta. Anyway, so let's open it up. Should we have Elijah go first, or should we have our awesome members go first?
Yeah, I think we could start with Elijah, and then we can just open the conversation from there.
Okay, so Elijah, what did you think of the episode? I know you were dropping in facts before I was just about to say it. But yeah, I mean, we only had 20 minutes, so obviously I couldn't put the whole story, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in general about your take on Hawaiian pizza, about the episodes, about pineapples, just everything.
Okay. Perfect. One awesome episode. I begin dig it, and a good edit, brother. Awesome stuff. Yeah, I'll kind of encapsulate all of my thoughts. I thought it was pretty awesome. Especially interconnecting the history of the overthrow, the interconnectedness between people who were in charge of the overthrow. Speaking of the original head of quote unquote state, a whole bunch of BS, but the head of the provisional government actually being a dole and actually giving access to his cousin. His cousin, from what I know, he experimented with a handful of actually fruits previous to having to come to a decision on the pineapple. He experimented with different fruits that could be in the tropics because he was interested in getting into big ag. And we all know today the hurt and the unhealthy impact on the ecosystem if how you farm in terms of big agriculture is all based on like a monocropping style that really is for just economic gain at the ending of the day. And so I think of all of those things as people seeing Hawaii as a cash cow, people seeing Hawaii as almost like a prostitute that is available to be pimped out because resources are able to be produced here all the time, and so specifically on Hawaiian pizza, I as a Hawaiian, I never really did like it. That just wasn't really but me, I'm not gonna lie, not gonna lie either. I love to eat pineapple. I think it's a healthy fruit in the fruit within itself, right? Kind of big thing that was not in the episode that we can potentially add in this conversation right now is that he discovered that the reason why in his planting of the pineapples in Hawaii on why it was superior, because he was experimenting on different areas. He had close friends doing it around the world, but what he discovered was that the reason why the pineapple of Hawaii had been extremely sweet, it's because of our Aina of Hawaii. In his place that he planted it on the Kunia Plateau has a high concentration of iron in the dirt. Yeah, and so if you go into Hawaii and see like all the plantations on Lanai, all the plantations here, all the pineapple is actually placed and planted into a piece of Aina that it's everything in the land looks extremely red because of the high concentration of iron. And so he learned that in putting it in that aina that had the high concentration of iron, it produced a pineapple that had a unique flavor that even today, I've been in Florida, I've been in Utah, I've had a chance to eat a pineapple there that is a dough pineapple, but had been produced in the Philippines, or had been produced, had one I picked up that was produced in Puerto Rico, or a place in the southern in Brazil, and it didn't taste the same as Hawaii's pineapples. It's a dough pineapple, but it didn't taste the same, and the reason for that is because the concentration of iron in the dirt here is much higher. But yeah, it as a fruit, being halakahiki, actually being a fruit that is not of Hawaii and looks like the hala fruit. It is a good expression and a good example of the oppression of actually small ag businesses in Hawaii, and the capitalization through big ag products to use, because at one point all of our pineapples were being exported. Today has a high demand enough in Hawaii that the pineapples that are produced on Oahu stays in Hawaii. According to what I know now, that may have changed, but yeah, I mean, hey, in terms of everything, bruh, I think it was a great episode. And a lot of information in that one episode that is still ingestible. And hey, it's pretty cool in how you guys exchange and conversation in your guys' episodes, because it's comedic, it's fun, historical facts, and then like, oh, I didn't expect that. I think it's pretty cool. A little quirky, which is good. But it has a lot of wisdom, a lot of good information, and I think you guys did an excellent job. So ho'omai ka ia ʻolua. Good job, guys. Good job.
Thank you for mahalo.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your approval. I did not know anything about that iron fact. I thought I did a lot of research, but apparently I should have just asked Elijah, because he'd be knowing things. Yeah, it's my goal for this. Like in general, I feel like I kind of was so like in your face about politics, like in the past with my brand, How Not to Travel Like a Basic Bitch. Like I've kind of like let it go with the still, a little bit of sass, but not so in your face. And so now with the food, for me, it was like a good way to like be political without being in your face. So like we can talk about everybody's favorite pizza minus me, like Hawaiian pizza, but like talking about politics and colonization and murder and stealing is just more fun through food, I think. And it was just a way that I wanted like people to learn about this. Like yesterday I posted about the overthrow, and like still people are like, I had no idea Hawaii had a monarchy. And it's the first thing that I learned, like Hawaiian people who live in Hawaii learn in school, is like, the first peoples here. And so when I like come into contact with people who are American and have no idea, I'm like, bruh, how you don't know this? And so I wanted a way to be able to like transmit this knowledge, and like through a fun, like easy, digestible, literal way. And I hope it was digestible. And I also love the science facts. Like I'm a PhD in nutrition, so I love that Louise put in that part about like that pineapple eats you kind of thing. But yeah,
that
so
was a lot of fun to research and add.
yeah, I love that. And I love that Elijah already knew that. I didn't know that about freaking pineapple. I don't eat pineapple, so I don't know.
Yeah, Elijah was always like 10 seconds ahead of us with the facts. Which is great.
Yeah, no, the interesting thing is, right, is that if you eat a heavy meal, it's actually why on a Hawaiian plate they actually began to implement a piece of pineapple at the end, because it helps in the processing of the food, because it's extremely, to eat Hawaiian food like the kalua pig and the lau lau and the rice, it usually leads people to having what we call a kanak attack. But what's actually happening is a food coma, that there's a spike in your blood sugar, and then heavy meats. And so like a lot of the energy in the human organism is headed down to the stomach, and so it puts the human body to sleep. And so they have started implementing a piece of pineapple on there. I'm not too sure if it was intentional or unintentional, but because it's highly acidic, it helps in the breaking down of all the foods so that it's easier on the body.
Didn't know. Yeah, so we also went over Olelo Hawaii, which is like what the original word of pineapple was. And like I love that Luis threw in his Spanish.
Yeah.
And
And
I
actually,
think sorry, go ahead.
yeah. And actually on that note, you were mentioning that about how we only had like 20 minutes or so for the content itself. So there was a lot of things that were cut out. And originally I wanted to add like another one of these fun facts, but there were just like not enough space or time. But I guess I can just share that here, which is a lot of fun, which is that I mentioned piña and how like the origin of that word as well. But it's interesting how English and Spanish are actually like the outliers on the name of the word pine, or like the word pineapple itself, because most other languages use a form of the word ananas, like anana in French, and I believe in German and Italian and so many others, right? But then what's interesting is that like actually ananas has a very interesting etymology. It comes from the Tupi Guarani language in South America, in Brazil and Paraguay, and it actually means the perfume of perfumes, which I thought was really nice. And it was like a fun little fact that didn't make it to the episode, but I thought it would be cool to share.
That's so dope.
Super cool.
And yeah, actually, someone's commenting about, don't some Spanish speakers use ananas? Sorry, yes, you're right. I know that in Argentina they use it. I'm not sure if they also use it in other countries. I know for a fact that in Argentina it's used, but it is like throughout the Spanish speaking world, piña is in general more common. Yeah.
Piña. Yeah. If you like pina colada.
And then we went into how like Europeans, I actually was just talking about this with somebody yesterday, about how Europeans use the pineapple as like a stunt, like a flex. Like I got pineapples, but they don't actually eat them, they just show them. And I really loved, and like would love to open up to whoever wants to speak, but I really love that Elijah put in the chat, like, yeah, it's just for decoration, like how they do animals, they kill them and they just put them up for decoration. I don't know. I feel like that's like so symbolic and so deep that you mentioned that, because that's kind of how I was like, how much abundance do these people have that they just can grow a whole pineapple for 4 years in like a green room and just to like not eat it, you know? But it also made me think about how I didn't mention this, and I mentioned it a little bit, but I should have talked about it more. But Hawaiian people had so much free time. They had so much free time back in the day because they were growing all of their own agriculture, and they were so self-sustaining and so abundant in everything that they had so much free time, so they could enjoy each other and pick up sports and do other things, which I feel like in our society, like I don't have that. I don't have free time. And so it's just like, and then basically when pineapples came, they put Hawaiians to work. So like taking away their free time, putting them in like basically labor, and for them to now have abundance of like just ridiculous abundance for what? Like, what is the point of like taking away somebody's abundance for you to just stunt or flex that you have a pineapple? I don't know. I don't know if
I'll go talk a little bit on that, because a thing had come to mind where I've heard all these stories all of my life, which I didn't really fully appreciate and like hear and put two and two together until recently. But so in Oahu, in Kaka'ako, there are huge huge pieces of real estate specifically for all the processing of the pineapples, right? And so, as it stated in the episode, how a lot of the people who were on the plantations still had people who were working on the plantations. You know, there is a good story on the the podcast, the Hawaii Verse podcast, speaking to probably like a food expert in Hawaii. His name is Brother Lanai Tobura, who grew up in Lanai. And he was speaking about how plantation days had the Filipino, had the Japanese, had the Korean, had the Kanaka, had the Portuguese, all working on the plantations. And they all had all of their own individual food. And every time they would eat lunch, each person had a 3-tier can that had the meat on the bottom. In the middle tier had rice, and then on the high third tier had kind of like the fruits and the veggies. And how in kind of like on lunch break, they would all come together in a circle and would have all of their food of all of their individual cultures, and they would just hand to each other. He had fish, he had spaghetti, he had adobo, he had all of these different foods, and they would come together and exchange, and that was the beginning of the plate lunch creation. Yeah, but a whole majority of people who worked on the pineapples worked in the warehouses, in each of the canneries. And so the canneries, I speak on the canneries because how the two of, speaking of the two of our parents, how they met when they were 16 and 18 is they had a job in like spring break, in their kind of 3-month break in high school over summer. They worked part-time job at the cannery because had high school opportunities there. And that's how the two of my parents met. And all of my aunties and uncles and all of my kupuna, and I talking about all of my kupuna who is almost 100 years old, they worked at the cannery for their entire career. Yeah. So their whole experience occupationally was all working as an employee in the corporation that was at the same time displacing our people, our work, our food systems, and our ecosystems. And they did not even know it because they were paying a good pay to all of their employees. And a majority of the employees were Hawaiians who were working for Dole, connected to this whole imperialism in Hawaii that was all stemmed through the illegal overthrow as well. And they did not even know. And they weren't even speaking Hawaiian on the job. They couldn't. And it was a real thing. And so I think about the both of my parents and how they would talk about all the time the good times at the cannery. And I realized, cannery, don't care. Wait, all of my ohana was working for the men. And they never even know. Only for one paycheck. And while they was doing that, they didn't know how to farm, and they was all picking up all of their food at Foodland. Yeah? Yeah, they was like, oh, cuz nuts, bro.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's like so important for people to hear. Like, like I think we've talked about this too, about like creating systems where your own peoples are oppressing your own peoples and not even knowing it. Right?
Not
Like
even knowing.
Even when we do our military talk, like our parents like joining the military and not even freaking knowing like what they're being used for, or knowing and just like trying to make it,
Because they're all looking for only the paycheck, guys. They're only looking only for the paycheck. And when the pay is good and everything in our currency system is what helps people to have quality of life, then all of the things that you hold as like the principles you live by, all the things that you hold as high worth and value, if that becomes all accommodated through money and currency, then you'll do anything to make the money to feed your ohana. So it's not like I place the blame on them, but if you're able to look at the bigger picture from the outside looking in on how these infrastructures and systems of imperialism put these things in place to oppress the people ignorantly and inadvertently, then you really begin to realize, like, how is humanity the way that we are? And then people hear about pineapples being Hawaiian, not even knowing, then they make a pizza out of it, and it's completely decultured and disconnected from truth. Yeah, and then it perpetuates the exact same story, which is ultimate lie. Yeah,
Exactly. Thank you so much. Do we have anybody that wants to share, hop on the mic? Anybody that has questions specifically for Elijah? He has a ton of knowledge, but probably like 10 more minutes. You shy out there.
Me, maybe. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Christine. And
No,
then I'll
I
ask mine.
So like with Hawaiian pizza not being Hawaiian, what would you like, what's a food that you would want somebody like want people to associate with Hawaii?
awesome. So it's not a fact that I'm against that kind of pizza. I've eaten ham and pineapple pizza. I think it was good. I think you maybe just call them ham and pineapple instead of Hawaiian. Yeah, because the like use of the terminology is what is the issue. And I have eaten at some good pizza spots who has kalua pig. They actually have pieces of fish on their pizza, because everything in, a huge expression of culture is in its foods, and so things evolve and adapt in its right way, and I think it's cool. But to answer your question about specific foods that is connected to Hawaii, it's all in Hawaiian words. So like things like to actually eat one, the main one is kalo, that is put into a paste that that has kind of like another name of poi. So if anybody's ever been to Hawaii and has eaten poi, but it's actually staple fruit is kalo. It's like a starch. It's a heavy base starch. It's like a potato that is also eaten in Mexico, and in Brazil, and in Argentina, in Colombia. I came across. So I spent 2 months in Las Vegas, and when I was in Las Vegas, I was looking for kalo and had a beautiful store, a huge store. The thing was almost like a food land or like a Costco, but it was all foods of Latin America. And I went over there and I found kalo, but it had a different name. I forget the name that it was called in that time. But if there's any food, it would be the main food, because it connects to kind of who we are ancestrally and in our lineage. But has kalua pig, has lau lau. In our last experience in Hawaii, we had a chance to tour around about 18 people from the heart of Brooklyn, New York City, and we did a full feast that they all had a chance to make each of these foods and dishes and eat them, right? And so, but as I was stating earlier, the deepest issue is just the word usage. If it could change the word usage to it being just ham and pineapple pizza instead of Hawaiian pizza, then it gives clarity that it's not cultural foods. Yeah, it's not cultural foods, because it's not cultural foods, right? Then it confuses people, and then it creates a different perception on what Hawaiian foods really are, and they don't really ever get to experience the real juice of Hawaiian cultural food systems. So yeah, I hope that answers a little bit.
That was a good question, Christine.
Mahalo for asking.
Got another one?
Yeah, well, I was thinking that I kind of got, I mean, I'm from Colombia, and Colombia is a very rich place in flora and fauna. We have very fertile lands, and we have like the very accurate weather conditions for a lot of produce. And we have had in our history some uh some parts of people coming to our into our land to take in our case it's bananas, and the US came to our lands and they had all these uh big plantations of banana, and that was something very harmful for our communities. So I was very interested in that because I thought that was something. I mean, I never thought that was something of a problem in Hawaii. So I would like to know a little bit more about that.
Awesome, awesome. Hey, mahalo nui. Yeah, this is a problem actually happening all around the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
It, especially in places that has quote unquote has like an ecosystem and climate that is ideal, yeah, which has like a lot of rain, a lot of nutrients in the soil, which happens to be actually places that has an abundance of like ecosystems and a rainforest all throughout the islands because of all the watersheds can produce plenty water to produce these foods, right? And so this has been an issue in all places. It's an issue in the Philippines. It's a big issue in all Eastern Asian islands. It's an issue in Guam. It's an issue everywhere. And the biggest issue that um, has to be spoken on is all of this is not ultimately to feed the people. It's to profit from the people through being in control of food systems, right? So that's extremely important to actually know that in ancient times where everybody prospered together, it was because how our people had farmed. Um, it was all it was all based on creating a food forest in their area that worked together, where all the roots of all of the plants and trees had not been invasive. If there were specific things that were invasive, it was uprooted. And invasive meaning it steals all the nutrients in the roots and in the aina that could be used to feed all the nutrients to the food producing crops, right? And so all of those things had been in place heavily in Hawaii for 2,000 years. And so in the introduction of this whole style of economy. Yeah. And had people who were in the Hawaiian kingdom, had a couple of our kings who took place in this because they had an interest in becoming an economic superpower in that time where all the European powers were just going throughout the Pacific, snatching up land, snatching up islands. We had to match them a little bit. And in order to do that, we had to have an economy that we could control, that there were equal amounts of, well, a higher amount of exports than imports, that we as a people, as an island chain, had been producing in abundance, that we had a surplus to export and to make money by. And we had that. But what we have now is that 85% or more of our foods are imported to Hawaii. Our economy is heavily heavily dependent on the imports and the resources of the United States, which means that in order for us as a people to feed our own, we have to begin planting again. And to restore our streams and our food systems, because you cannot be independent on your own unless you can feed your own populace. If you're not able to feed the populace and these other industries head into your aina because they're more inclined to doing this kind of business, and they come and they displace you and use all of your lands to export into New York because everybody in New York love Hawaiian rum, and it's coming from these crops of sugar cane that is in Oahu that could be utilized to produce food to feed our populace, then the bigger issue is reconnecting our people and how we make our decisions on how we eat, instead of going to Costco to begin to plant foods in your yards that can feed your children. So when the crash happens, you're not dependent on the imports that is coming into Honolulu Harbor. Your food production is dependent on all the places that you plant food, all the farms that you're connected to, and who you build relationship and community with, because food builds community. If you don't have food, there's no community, because everybody gonna be killing each other because everybody hungry. Yeah. So
Yeah,
all
for
of
sure.
I hope that answered it.
You did, yes, definitely. That's so interesting.
Yeah,
And
I
so
love it.
sad as well.
Yeah.
Very, very. Yeah, I think that I think everybody's like, nobody wants to be a farmer. But I think what people don't understand is like our societies are back in the day, like our societies were all built around food. Like if you go to Mexico, Chichen Itza, they literally like made a full freaking temple to like showcase when is harvest time, like when does the serpent come on the pyramid? Like all of our societies were structured around food and harvesting, like moon and sun, because that's when it would tell us when we could eat, when we could plant, all those things. And I feel like we don't know any of that stuff anymore. Like we're not connected at all. And because we have like lost that connection, I feel like we also have lost the connection to each other. And for me, it's really profound and really deep. But like for the purpose of this episode, it's really like about food. I don't know, about freaking pineapple pizza, but it like goes so much deeper than that for me, because I'm like, when you disconnect like people from land and then disconnect people from each other, that's when we just have way too much time to like, we have way too much time and are so dysregulated that like we don't even know how to like take care of each other. And that's like my main concern on this planet.
Yeah, it's almost idiocracy that we as a human species in the quote unquote first world, because in third world countries, they still have a connection to the island because that's all they get. Yeah, they have community, they have village. Potentially they get a hard time because other places are poisoning water sources. But in like the first world countries built around our convenience lifestyle, it's almost idiocracy that we live in to be, and to think that the importance of our food systems is as easy as just heading to the supermarket to shop. It's like how we have a disconnection of the health of our waters and our aquifers and our streams, because all we have a connection to is the faucet. Yeah. And so, but our children hardly look beyond the faucet, and there's a lot more things to take into mind. But when you build a society that's individualized, that is commodified, and that is convenienced, then you lose all the mana that is to be learned in your connection to your resources and the maintenance and responsibility in that connection to your resources.
Yeah, totally. All right. So we're coming up in an hour. Do you have anything more to say, Luis?
No, just that it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this conversation, and yeah, just reading everyone's input as well. And yeah, I just want to remind you that we're going to be having live sessions every 2 weeks. So 2 weeks from now, we're going to be listening to our second episode, which is all about Tabasco sauce and the very unusual journey that it has, and about whether or not it's Mexican, which is up for debate in a really interesting way. And so, yeah, if you want to join us for that one, please do. And we'll be, updating on who our guest speaker is going to be on that one, as well as on the rest of the shows, which will be airing every 2 weeks. And then next week, we'll be airing excerpts from this conversation. And so we'll also be airing, in case if you can't join us for the live sessions, we're also going to be just airing recordings of these sessions as well on this same feed. So you're welcome to listen and to follow us on social media, of course. And thank you very much for joining us today.
Mahalo, everyone, for joining us, and special mahalo to Elijah for your time. I appreciate you.
Thank you very
Gang,
much.
it was beautiful to see you guys, and congratulations on launching season 3. I hope all is well and you guys reach millions of people in peace and love.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank
All right,
you.
guys, we will.
Bye.
Bye.